Good day, everybody! It is Calxiyn and Hunter here. If you guys enjoyed this video, you guys should subscribe, become patrons over on Patreon to support the channel, and follow us over on social media. So today we are going to be talking about Nora, but not in the shipping video you guys have always wanted, and how the relationship is crumbling, and even though they were canon for 5 minutes, it's not looking good, sis. So I would like to talk about, I guess, Nora and Ren individually, and sort of go into why they are acting this way, I guess, and then talk about how that is impacting them together. And I think it would be easiest to start with Ren first, because I think that Nora, like Hunter had said in the first take of this video, has been the most interesting she has ever been.
Yes.
And has the best characterization she has ever had.
It's interesting, because before she was always forceful, but she was only ever forceful in like a wacky way that she'll yell at you to like eat pancakes. But now she's being forceful in like a political, like, social way.
Yeah, and I think here's the thing.
It's interesting.
Right? Ren, on the other hand, has possibly been the most unlikable he's ever been, because people are being like, Ren's a fucking asshole, right? You know, on first viewing, that is what people are saying. Yeah. So let's start with Ren. I think why Ren is so willing to be Ironwood's good little soldier is for a couple reasons. First of all, I think this stems from his village, right? Like, the problem with the village is out there, I guess, like out in the wild of Mistral, right, is that there was and somebody pointed this out in my comment section, but I don't remember who, so, like, good on you, a lack of security against the Grimm, a lack of, you know, training for the people to properly defend against, like, the Nukalave, and all of that stuff. So I think that Ren's issues right now in this volume stem from that. He does think, like, if they had more preparation, if they did have more training, they would have won. I think that is sort of what Ren sort of thinks in his mind. Like, if they had prepared better, if they had more huntsmen, you know what I mean? Like, if they had stacked their forces to protect Kageyuri?
Yes.
You know, it would have gone better for them. I think that Ren still, even if he doesn't think that, like, mentally, he knows that subconsciously. Yes. Like, he blames that as the cause of his parents' death and the cause of the death in everyone in town. Unpreparedness, the lack of security, the lack of huntsmen, the lack of being able to sort of defend and fight and all of that stuff. And I think that bleeds into Atlas because he sees Ironwood with his big military, and I think that, you know, Ren to some extent... Exactly. If we had that, we would have been okay. I think that to some extent, because of what happened to Ren in his childhood, he does think might is right. That if you are strong enough, you can fight against anything, right? If they were strong enough, they could have, you know, killed the Grimm, and I wouldn't be an orphan. You know what I'm saying?
And then mommy and daddy would come back.
That's basically what I mean. I think that is Ren's sort of issue, in a sense, is that he went to Beacon with Nora, and to be honest, like, we don't really know why they decided to be huntsmen. I think it's pretty, like, clear to some extent, but at the same time, they were orphans, so really, it's a hot meal, better than prison, you know what I'm saying? Be a huntsman, right? And, like, obviously, they have the skills, but I'm thinking, like, all this time, it hasn't really been an issue for Ren. You know what I mean? Like, he's been in a safe environment, and then in Volume 4, he sort of was reminded of what had happened.
Yes.
In his home and stuff like that, and then in Volume 5, they did win, when you think about it, right? It wasn't a major win, but, you know, with their force, they were able to stop Cinder and, you know, whatever else, right?
To not, you know, commit the murder of thousands of people.
Yeah, exactly. They saved the school. So I feel like, you know, since all of these things have happened, it's been constantly reinforced in Ren's mind that if you have enough strength, you can defend what matters, which is very honorable. But the thing is, Ironwood, you know, that's what sort of makes him a little bit of a pawn, I guess you could say, for Ironwood, is that it's one of those things where it's like he sees Ironwood with all of his ships and all of his forces, and he wants that. You know what I mean? He's like, yes, there we go. Now we're talking, you know?
He respects power, I guess.
Exactly.
And he's attracted to power.
Yeah, and I don't think he's attracted to power in, like, a Cinder way where he's going to do something sketchy, but he does think that Ironwood... You know, I think that he has, like, a very hopeful in Ironwood. You know what I mean? Like, he is... I don't know how to explain it. He has faith in Ironwood, in all of these forces.
He thinks that Ironwood is the solution to his issues. Someone with a lot of power who will act decisively.
And that could have been the solution back then.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I feel like that's how Ren is sort of thinking of it. The other thing is, alright, I talked about this in my video. I don't know if people appreciated this. Ironwood kinda looks like Ren's dad when you think about it. Like, and I said that he also looks like the dad from Aladdin,
but
which
like
is irrelevant.
Well,
like, I don't know. There's about them that look similar to me.
Like,
Maybe
I don't know.
could...
I feel like Ren wouldn't look at Ironwood and be like,
yes. Subconsciously.
Hello, white dad.
You know what I mean? I'm just saying, like, in a subconscious way, like, maybe he could see, like, Ironwood, you know, I'm just saying. I'm just saying. You know what I mean? I don't think that's a bad...
Yeah, no,
I'm trying to rotate the screen so you guys can maybe see it. I don't think that's wrong. Okay, I don't think that's a bad thing to say. Like, if you guys can see Ren, okay, look at Ren's dad, alright? He sort of has the gray going on. He has, like, the beard, like, the facial hair. He just has the same sort of presence as Ironwood, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I just think I think it's a daddy issue situation going on here. I think that Ren sees Ironwood as his dad, okay? I don't wanna... I'm just saying. Anyway.
You're just saying.
I'm just saying. That is all I am saying. I am just saying. Because what do you think about it? If he was tall, with black hair streaked with gray, a mustache, and a goatee, right? Like, Ironwood has a full-on beard. I don't know. Yeah. There are similarities about them, okay?
Graying, full beard.
And, like, their sort of demeanor. So I'm just saying that Ren has some daddy issues, okay? And has now adopted Ironwood as his father. Oh, I don't think that's a controversial thing to say. Anyway, then we sort of move on to Nora, right? Who has... no memory of her past, who has been orphaned.
Doesn't talk about
right?
her past.
And so here's the thing, certainly. Right? People are like, well, why does Nora, like, Nora has to be from Mantle, right? Like,
that's
you know what I mean?
Is,
and I think that she is, but at the same time, you don't need to be from Mantle to understand their suffering, because Ren and Nora were both orphans, right? Like, they were probably on the street, they probably didn't have enough to eat, they probably didn't have enough defenses.
She was on the street,
yeah, I know, I'm just saying, like, after that, like, together, I'm saying that she understands what the people of Mantle are going through, because what they are going through is a universal sort of poverty. You know what I mean? They experience that in Mistral, they probably experienced that on the way to Vale. You know what I mean? Like, the experience of being the people of Mantle, to some extent, is a universal experience. It's found in other kingdoms in the world. And so I feel like Nora just strongly relates with them, right? And so when Nora is sort of relating to the people of Mantle, because she has sort of that empathy, she experienced that, she lived through that, so she's fighting for them. I feel like Ren, on the other hand, lived through that, and so he's going with Ironwood instead of siding with them. You know what I mean? Because
he views Ironwood not as a creator of
the problem. He's a solution.
But as a solution.
And I think that's what is really tearing them apart here. Like, I think that is what is really causing some friction in their relationship, is that Nora does not see Ironwood as a solution. And I feel like Nora has seen some Ironwoods before. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, there have always been the Ironwoods of the world. And I'm not saying Ironwood is super, super bad, but I just mean there have been people with power who think that they have the solution, and that solution only continues to hurt people. And I'm sure that they have experienced that on the road, so to speak.
And certainly this isn't the first time a daddy issue caused turmoil in a relationship.
Oh boy. Are you talking about Salem and Osmond?
That's a good
Salem's
point.
dad locked her up in the tower.
That's a good point. I hadn't considered that. I was making a more general statement, but you know what? Also, maybe Blake. Who knows?
Anyway. Anyways, so that is sort of where we are with that. I would like to talk about Nora in a more general sense, because I don't know why. Okay, so last Tuesday, my mom and I went to go see Anastasia the musical at I think it was at Ed Mirvish somewhere. They put it on, and Nora just gives me like really strong Anastasia vibes for some weird reason. Like, you know, I feel like maybe that'll be the shell shock to Nora, is that she's fighting for the people of Mantle, but she was actually one of the noble people that she possibly despises. You know what I'm saying? And so, you know, with Anastasia, right, you have this girl who has been mysteriously orphaned, who doesn't have her memories, who lives on the street and just tries to get by. They're like, hey, you could possibly be a princess. And so she sort of, you know, like, not pretends, but, like, tries to act in that way, and then, you know, the musical sort of continues on with finding the grandmother, right? Like, that's the whole thing. It's the grandmother's the only family, so she goes and she finds the grandmother, but at the end of Anastasia, if you guys don't know, the musical, I hated how the musical did it, but in the movie, she's like, don't worry, Grandma, I'll be back, I'm just gonna go travel the world for a while. In the musical, she's like, goodbye, Grandma, I'm never gonna see you again. Glad that we met, though, and abandons her for Dimitri, which I did not appreciate. So basically, what I'm trying to say is, like, she finds her identity, she finds her family, and then she goes off with Dimitri because she realizes that she also has love and stuff like that. So we did a theory.
Do you want to live with your grandmother for
I don't know.
years?
I'm just saying.
I don't know about that.
We did a theory on Nora being a long lost princess or like noble person of Atlas, and that's kind of how I'm seeing things.
But I imagine that
because imagine if her grandmother was the maiden, they probably would have been put in a higher place of power. You know what I'm saying? Like closer to Ironwood, so they could keep an eye on her. She would have been very highly regarded, especially by Ironwood, and I mean only Ironwood would know, right? But like they would be given things to be made comfortable. I imagine they would have been made noble people.
But similar to Anastasia, she probably do you think are the Romanovs to Nora's Anastasia? Because I imagine.
What do you mean?
Oh, sorry, not Romanovs. Like, who are, like, I don't know,
the
Vladimir Lenins to Nora's Romanov, if you kind of understand that. Like, who, because I imagine...
Probably the people of Mantle, to be perfectly honest.
I don't know, but, well, I mean, if that works, I mean, Robin is, not a communist, well, I mean, she is kind of giving away stuff for free. Okay, so maybe she is a communist revolutionary, but...
Here's the thing about the Romanov situation, is that, okay, let's say that Nora's grandmother is 80 years old.
Yes.
Let's say.
And I mean, she does look it.
That is when the war ended. Mm-hmm. And when the war ended, Atlas became Atlas, and Mantle was no longer Mantle. So I'm gonna go off on a limb and say that things were probably not so great during that particular time. You know what I mean? Like, I could see sort of stuff happening around that area, but at the same time, that makes Nora's grandmother too young. Does that make sense? What I could see is 80 years ago, right? The Atlas was sort of created and people were put in power. Because 80 years ago, that's when the academies were made and the relics were hid inside the academies. So that's when Atlas started floating. Is that after Atlas started to float, that is when people like not Jacques Schnee, but Nicholas Schnee, and sort of other sort of families sort of came into power with the new unlimited resources.
To open the vault, you need the maiden. So she probably was around for the lifting
But she's
off
too
the ground,
she's
maybe.
too old though, I
or
think.
Or too young, don't you mean?
No, she's too young. She would be too young 80 years ago. She would literally be 0. She would be a baby.
Unless she's like 90. Maybe she's 100.
She
Who
could
knows?
have been 10. I don't know.
She
but
could be 100.
I don't want to fool around with the timelines. But what I'm saying is that you have this new floating city where it's sort of like seen as the elite, and you have these new people in power. We haven't really heard about like a revolution situation, but I'm just gonna go off on a limb and possibly assume that people didn't exactly feel friendly towards the rich people when they first started being in power. You understand what I mean? And I'm not saying that as Robin, like, you know, that Robin did it. I'm just saying that anyone could have done it. Like,
but she sides with Mantle, which is odd.
And so that's what I'm saying. That could be a shell shock to her world, is that she's been siding with Mantle, but she's one of the noble people that have caused all the kerfuffles, caused all the trouble.
I don't know. What I mean? I think it might make more sense if her family was once a noble, was taken out by other nobles.
Yeah, I like that too.
And so then she was taken out, and then she existed. Her family then existed in Mantle.
I sort of thought about that as well, because like think of the Schnee Dust Company. There have been other people that tried probably to get into the dust industry.
Presumably, I mean they have a monopoly.
You know what I'm saying? And like
to get a monopoly, you need to do some catchy things.
I remember we watched that RWBY fan project thing, and they sort of had other noble families, and like stuff got bloody. Like I could see that definitely happening here, and so I definitely think somebody went after Nora's family, and they died. Like the parents died. You know what I mean? And I also sort of just wonder, like, what if it has connection to her grandmother being a maiden? Because we hear about Salem sending an army of Grimm to sort of interrupt Tyrion's plane, and for some reason, you know, Nora ends up in Mantle. Nora ends up in Mistral, and the continents aren't connected. So what if it's like, oh, you gotta run, like Salem knows you're here. Ooh, right, whatever. They're all on some sort of plane together, and they are sort of noble or higher class, right? Because again, I think Ironwood would give something special to the person who's literally the maiden, whether it's a nice house on a hill or a nice apartment building to raise a family. I don't know. I'm just saying that I think they would have gotten something from Ironwood. So they're all on the plane, right? They're running away. They're going to Mistral, and then Salem and her freaking Grimm come in here. Nora like falls out of the sky, hits her head, and doesn't remember who she is. The parents die. But because she has the Winter Maiden power, she gets away. The Winter Maiden. Okay. And that's why the Winter Maiden is now old and like decrepit and all that stuff. You understand what I mean? Like the Winter Maiden went home. She thought that her
granddaughter,
her child and her granddaughter were dead. Because I don't know, like, did Nora's mother,
father.
like, you know, and this is all hinging on the fact that Nora's like, family is actually the Winter Maiden. We don't actually know for sure yet, right? Like, it's all just a theory. But yeah, like, maybe she wasn't allowed to tell her family that she was the maiden. And
or maybe she was lied to as well, like, your family are all gone. Because she needed to, like, worry about the job, and the job was in Atlas and not in Minstrel, where she would probably go searching for Nora.
Exactly. And then Nora's, falls out of the sky, hits her head, she doesn't remember anything. It just makes perfect sense.
Also, say she's 80 now, say she's 80 now.
She could have been, like, 60.
But it would have been more like 10 years, so she'd still be 70. That's still kind of old to
65?
go trekking in the
65.
wilderness.
She would have been at least 65, right? Because Nora's 17. So let's just say 65.
But she didn't look 3. She looked maybe more 5-ish, 6-ish.
Okay,
so I would say about 10. I would say maybe about 70.
Yeah, 70 is a little old to still be going.
I'm not saying you can't, do shit in your 70s, but, search and rescue, I don't know if that's necessarily one of the things.
So, yeah, do we think that Ren is going to be Nora's Dimitri? Because, to be honest, I don't know. I think Dimitri also had the idea, and that's what makes it weird to have an Anastasia comparison, because Dimitri also had the idea that money is power. Hey, I am going to pretend that you're Anastasia, give you to your grandmother, and I'm going to get a really nice reward and live the high life in Paris, France. And I can't blame him because, he's an orphan in, I guess, communist Russia, ?
Yes.
Right? But at the same time, I'm just sort of like... In the musical, it's interesting because they make his father an anarchist who died in a labor camp for his convictions of... anarchism. And so I don't know, I sort of think about Ren's father and the beliefs his father had, which were not anarchists, but the stuff the knowledge that was passed down to Ren here. I don't know.
You must always be a good son, and also take this Molotov and chuck it into that Starbucks.
Not like that. I don't know. I'm just thinking things. Do you think that they'll reconcile by the end?
I think they will reconcile. Either shit goes terribly wrong or they reconcile once.
Because here's what we were talking about in the analysis, right? Blake and Yang can come to a compromise, or at least an understanding with each other and make a new plan. Because I said this in the analysis, compromise is not 50-50. It's not doing half of what you want and half of what the other person wants most of the time.
At least not all the time.
You know what I mean? And that can be a good way to compromise, right? But compromising can also sometimes be understanding each other and forming a new plan, which is what I feel like Yang did. She didn't go with just Blake's plan, but she sort of understood Blake's idea and they created a new plan together. That was the sort of idea going on there. You know what I mean? And so it's like what Blake and Yang have, Ren and Nora seem to sort of lack. And I think it is a communication thing, but I think it's just, I don't know. I think it's a different ideology, but they're getting further and further apart that talking about it would end in an argument, right? Because Blake and Yang don't fight about it. Obviously, they do have a different understanding because, Blake was also once sort of a revolutionist who wanted to make the world better, similar to Robin, she can understand. But they talked about it before it got into an argument because Yang sort of asked her opinion, like, oh, you don't think so? And they sort of talked about it. They didn't yell at each other. But here's the thing. Ren has witnessed Nora popping off on Ironwood 3 times. And so Ren's probably like, yeah, guess we can't talk about that anymore. You understand what I'm saying?
And so he was talking.
Exactly. And so it's like as things have further and further, you know what I mean? They never, if they had the conversation when things were less heated, things would probably be better. But they've waited so long to talk to each other about what the other believes that Ren is going, yes, sir, and Nora's like, what? What the fuck, sis? Right? That's how I feel like it's kind of getting here. Not gonna lie. I feel like that's sort of where we're at. By the end, will they? I don't know. Because Atlas is supposed to be 2 volumes, and I don't know if they're gonna bring out the Winter Maiden. I feel like maybe they will at the very end, just because she was already set up. Everything in Act 1 was set up for Act 2. So if we think about things set up in Act 1, it was Winter Maiden, Relic of Creation, to some extent, it's there, we know that the city's gonna fall down because they brought it up, right? Watts, Tyrion, all that stuff. What hasn't been set up is, Cinder and Neo and their sort of plans, and obviously Cinder will want to go after the maidens, so, yeah. That's a little awkward. I
don't know, I think it might take Nora saving the day for Ren to finally, or, Nora saving the day or Ironwood really fucking up to realize, oh, I might have been wrong.
Do we think
Yes.
Two things.
Yes.
That the grandmother does remember Nora, and Ironwood's plan will fail, as we've sort of discussed, that he totally left out the human element and thought he could just basically program Nora's mother, or Nora's grandmother, to not think of her by only sending in Winter. Do you think that Nora will get the powers?
Yes. That's been, like, our theory going forward.
But
will
that be what lets her save the day?
Potentially?
Because Ren,
I don't know.
like we talked about this earlier, like Ren has this sort of thing with power, and then Nora gets the power. I think that's sort of a very interesting, like, twisty situation. I
also suspect that, like, she won't even see Nora. Like, I suspect that maybe Nora's grandmother or Freya...
We'll just think of her, right?
Freya, like, or either has, like, dementia and thinks Winter is Nora.
That's sad.
It is sad.
But, okay, how does that work?
Dementia?
No, not the dementia. Okay. If I'm in my head thinking of you in name, but think of Arnold, does Arnold get the maiden powers, or do you get the powers? Because I'm thinking of your name, but I'm thinking of another person. So, if she thinks that Winter is Nora, does it go to Nora because that is her intention, or does it go to Winter because that is her body?
I think it goes to intention. Because it's who you think of.
It's who you think of last, but what happens if she's thinking of Nora and Winter at the same time?
I guess she kind of is. I think she's going to the person she thinks it is. So she's not really thinking of Winter, she's thinking of her daughter Nora and just mistaking her daughter.
Right, so she basically thinks that Nora is...
But that is a bit of a gray area.
She thinks that Winter is her granddaughter Nora. Yes. So she's thinking of Nora in her head, but calling her Winter.
Calling Winter Nora.
Yeah.
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 Because it's who you want it.
That's a little confusing.
But she's she's confused. She has dementia.
I know, I'm just saying. I think that's a good idea, though. Mm-hmm. Like, what if, like, Winter, like, what if she's on her deathbed and Winter's with her and she's like, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. And
yes, Nora, dear.
And
Winter's like, Nora.
I always loved you the most, Nora. And then Winter's like,
Nora!
And then Nora just gets it. That would be terrible.
Also, we have
wonderful.
Trying to think of the last time we saw someone got maiden powers in front of us. It must have been Cinder.
I guess.
Even
her, we didn't necessarily
Did her, like, eyes shoot lasers or shit? Are we gonna have Nora, like, lose her mind out of nowhere?
I don't know. We haven't really seen what happens when somebody gets all the powers at once, right? We only saw Cinder got half and then the other half. We haven't seen a natural power getting. Does that make sense? What if, like, oh my god, you know what would be so cool? Like, what if Nora, like, the world is falling because the Staff of Creation is gone? Like, what if Nora with the maiden powers could, like, hold up the world?
And then
with her lightning and her electricity.
Well, because
that's
like
save
an old
Mantle.
school.
Or maybe she would, like push it out of the way and Atlas would fall, but Mantle would be safe. Like, that would be whack.
That's like the old school RWBY theory of all of Team Juniper is going to die.
And then Ren will be like...
And so, like, will Ren die or will Nora die? Like, presumably, I don't know. Like, will Ren maybe die because he's too stubborn and stays with Ironwood?
I don't know I don't know if Nora would have enough strength to literally carry the entire city, but I mean, like, just push the city out of the way.
she does have thunder
into
thighs.
the hole. Remember, like, there's a big hole. So what if she... like, is somehow able to yeet it into the hole so it doesn't hurt Mantle. Like, that would be in her character and sort of come full circle of her wanting to protect Mantle and the people of Mantle.
I guess so.
And, like, Atlas. It's not so fun when Atlas is looking down on you, like, to protect them from that.
That might be...
My second question, though, was, before we got distracted, will she join the Happy Huntresses?
I don't think she would abandon RWBY.
Because here's the thing. I feel like if they were going to do that, Yang and Blake are already talking to Robin, and so it would be weird if Nora was just like, well, see ya! You know what I mean? Like, if they wanted to do that, I feel like they should have had Nora talk to Robin instead and take her hand and all that stuff, and maybe she could have ran off with
I'm concerned she just might get too OP if they have a maiden on there. Because think of every maiden so far has not really been on Team RWBY's
So she gets
side.
the power and dies. And then it goes to some random ass person, basically, right?
I guess so, yeah.
Wouldn't it? Unless she thinks of Winter and then Winter gets it again. Because she knows that would be the right thing to do, question mark? I don't know. Because that would sort of be interesting, too. Even though she doesn't like Winter. Maybe that's a compromise. Even though she doesn't like Winter, she can understand that Winter is a better choice and tries to think of Winter really hard before she before she dies.
Mm-hmm.
Ripperoonie to that. I guess Nora's dying this volume.
Ren dies, and that really fucks her up, and somehow, I don't know, incapacitates her. Maybe when she drops Atlas down, she injures herself gravely.
Maybe she gets stuck under the city.
Kind of like what happens with Amber, that she's not dead, but she's incapacitated.
Yeah. Wow, we just gotta get rid of Nora, don't we? Anyway.
Alright.
That's unfortunate, but I think that we have exhausted all our options. Will they reconcile?
Maybe.
Probably not.
Will they reconcile?
Right now.
Will they die? Who knows?
Who knows? Anyway, this was fun. We will talk to you guys later. Hope you guys enjoyed. Bye.